Biba, with years of experience in the industry and now working for Fraunhofer on the next step in digitalization of industry and the competitiveness of Europe, what is digitalization actually for industry and what is its value in the current time?
Digitalization for industry. So we talk about manufacturing is a totally new principles in production. So I usually give example to people like before when we go for a holiday, we print a route planner and we follow the lines. And then we experience all kind of traffic jams or accidents, but we follow our line and we eventually arrive. Nowadays, because the data is available about every situation on the road, even weather, even where we want to stop to have a coffee, we just tell to a system where we want to be and we say in which way we want to arrive. A system takes care of it. This is when you have lots of data available and the data is structured to help you in certain tasks. The same is in production. So we should not see production from the point of one factory and several machines connected. The world is much better. We have to look at ordering systems, so the complete platforms that are getting orders from the customers. We have to look at the supply chain. We have to look at the logistics, at the internal logistics, external logistics, and taking all those variables around one factory. Imagine how complicated it is to that kind of production to be steered by people. We end up in endless discussions and negotiations and calculations. So just swapping from one production planning to another can cost 3 days. Why not working in a network data systems where every variable can optimize itself and come to the end? So that means for one production, when through platforms you get an order, your machines already know how to adapt, and if one machine cannot do it, the system knows to shift it to another system, what we call rerouting, and then directly look at the supply chain and so forth and so forth. We are then gaining lots of time. We are actually maximizing the utility of our factories and maximizing the valuable time of the production. That's a digitalization.
And if you look at the industry from a perspective like people that are not in the industry, they maybe already expect that it's in such a way digitalized. But there are many steps to be made, right?
Yes, very often automation is confused with digitalization. So we see robots in the factory working, but we have it already for 30 years, especially if you look at the automotive industry. Digitalization is something else. This is changing principles of production. So we don't anymore tell robot what to do on a specific step. Robot gets complex algorithms that takes much broader environment into account and adapt to what robot has to do. So we are not, of course, if you want to even start thinking about digitalization, you have to have a certain digital infrastructure and certain level of automation. So it doesn't come from industry 2.0, let's say. But change of principles of production is not just on the shop floor. The complete organization is changed. And what you then see that also companies are changing a core business. We have an excellent example of a 24/7 tailor steel. Everybody's talking about that. But the point is that investments of a decade actually changed the core business of organization. Sometime companies, or 10 years ago, the specialty was in an operator who knows how to operate machine. Today is on software engineers to know how to handle data in order to have a fully aligned systems. So the principle is changed, and that's why it's so difficult.
Yeah, so industrial companies need to reshuffle the way of thinking and how they are operating in the current day and time.
Yes, this is, and that's difficult. It is not just we have to think differently. We have to change our culture. People are doing different jobs in production. It's a wrong understanding that digitalization is actually deleting people from factories. This is totally not right. We need more people to work. Just people have different jobs. People are not anymore linked to one spot in production. Using right data on the right place in the right moment through, for example, smart devices. people are enabled to create values through whole chain of production. So they are not only operators of one machine or only doing something in welding. And that kind of change requires different mindset, requires new competencies. The organizations have to get used to learn continuously and increase their knowledge base continuously.
And how far away are we from that situation that people are beyond that transition, that it is implemented?
Well, if I look at our region, eastern part of the Netherlands, we have most of our customers are there, and we work a lot with small and medium organizations. I think that we are on a very high level of understanding what has to happen, because our production, looking at the automatization level, is on a very good level. Most of the companies where we step in, this is really good to see that they fully understand what automation is. They are very much aware what sort of infrastructure they need for that and how the processes should look like or should run. That's really it's really very good. But now this change, they are seeking for help. We have many projects in what we call Industry 4.0 audit. It's a Fraunhofer methodology, and we actually help them to make a very solid, in-depth plan how to now come to that transition. And what is also very remarkable to mention is that our companies are completely open to learn. So every project we have, we also organize a set of trainings, workshops. We even have our engineers on their shop floor, because, and that's a good mindset, because they say, we want to be able to do it ourselves. We want to team up. So we don't work for industry, we work with the industry. And then as a team, we guide them to come to a new level. So I think that in our region, but I think also in the Netherlands, we have a very good, let's say, solid base to catch up with the complexities of digitalizations in a good way.
All right, that is great to hear. And Corona was a wake-up call for many companies. How are they adapting, and how are they coping with it?
Well, there are different situations, of course. Companies that are linked to automotive industry, when the orders are not there, the only way you can see, okay, what will be the diversification process? How can I use my technology for something else? That's not a short-term adaptation. That hurts really. You also have companies that realize now that the supply chain they have is not really optimal for the times of pandemics. And what we see also that on a smaller scale, companies that are very healthy are trying to take over parts of the supply chain, to invest in a supply chain and to continue to grow. You also have companies that do not have problem with the industry nor the supply chain, but their level of digitalization is just hanging behind. So they have to be much more efficient. Those companies are usually coming to us to seek for help, because we can help them on a short but also on a long term. I think it's a difficult situation. Every company deals with it in a maximum way that can, with the maximum focus. Of course, there is a shortage of cash, and we will experience that also till end of the year. But very important thing is getting out of crisis. The way to that is not to go down and to chop investments or to get rid of people. The way to get out of the crisis is actually to invest where you can gain the most. And I think from a European perspective and from the perspective of the Netherlands, that's an innovation. So we have to find a way to become a solid partners in the digital supply chains. And that's where digitalization is bringing us in the future.
Yeah. And what are typical questions that company come with you?
Typical question, we just had several roundtables, is in the level of data infrastructure. So what you see in the last 10 years, in the factories, there have been many softwares used, ERP systems or some other systems, and then in time, people or companies were adding softwares on adding some IT solutions, so that architecture and infrastructure of the companies is not anymore adequate for what they want to achieve. There is very little knowledge on that one. As I said, core business of those companies were not in softwares or IT solutions. So mostly companies come to us and with the questions, do we need MES system, or do we need ERP, or how can we connect systems? You see that they struggle. They can't really choose the right systems. They don't know how to connect it. They struggle with the functionalities that they should actually have in a production. That's usually the first step. But then when we start working together, then it comes to connectivity, then it comes to machines, then it comes to competencies, and then we roll out a complete process. But hurdle around software systems and connectivity, so overall data management, this is pretty much complex things to be handled, especially for, as I said, for small and medium enterprises.
Yeah, what kind of people are required for such kind of knowledge and to work within the companies?
Well, that's a catch. From one side, you have IT people that know softwares, but you also have to know production. So you have production operations people that do not know softwares, but do know really a lot about production. But the knowledge you need is actually integrated knowledge of both sides. Those kind of competencies are rare to find. We have it in Fraunhofer, but people have to understand we have, as Fraunhofer Project Center, we operate with Fraunhofer IPT in Germany and University of Twente. So our resources and our knowledge base is really extensive. So for every situation in industry, we do have experts, and we do, our engineers, which are mostly PhDs, are trained from both sides. So even the bigger companies struggle with the same thing. So it is a question of learning, really stepping into a new field and training our people, IT people to understand production, and production people to start operating in a data environment. Yeah. So, and that's why we are also offering trainings and workshops and guidance, everything that is needed, so that those competencies land into the factories.
That's really great.
Yeah, well, I hope so. So yes, it is necessary. It is really necessary, and especially in the corona times, that's why we now rapidly going to digital platforms for learning, because we want to bring knowledge to everybody in every single moment in an affordable way. Otherwise, we will be too slow. People have no time to go 5 days somewhere to learn something that only one person knows. We have to go to massive learning at the moment and massive change.
Yeah, I understand. And if you look at competitiveness from a geographic perspective, you have the US, China, and Europe. How are these forces reshuffled in this time and day?
Yeah, you have three very unique, let's say, competitors. America is dominating data economies and data platforms. China is extreme fast decision maker with very clear strategies, investing in digitalization at an enormous scale. If you even automotive industry is now moving there, not because they have a cheap workforce, but because they have a greenfield factories that has enormous potential. But what is authentic for Europe, it always was. It's engineering excellence. I always say that. This is our foundation. Now, what we have to do with our knowledge, we have to bring it into digital domain, and then we will be the champions. And if you look how fast we can increase productivities, increase digitalizations in our companies, for example, VDL Netcar is one of the very good examples. We have to stop looking at the offshoring business. We have to bring production back. It is also now with this production of protective masks and so forth. We have to use our core knowledge of engineering and turn it and embed it in digital system and make everything much and much more independent of the human workforce. Get humans to do jobs that are absolutely necessary for our digital environment, and then focus on innovation. That's where we can lead. All the biggest machine producers, that was always from Europe. We should not lose it. So I think that we are very strong competitor on a global scale, but we have to speed up with investments and speed up with decision making. That's where it's in Europe a little bit behind if you look at America and China, because we are very much decentralized.
Yeah, so we have to pace up the speed.
Yes. Fraunhofer is a good example. I mean, we as Fraunhofer Project Center, we look locally, we look nationally, but our biggest purpose is to increase competitiveness of Europe, because we are working for a biggest OEM companies, smallest SMEs. But this is a value chain. For us, the both are equally important. And the value chain is what's going to win. Because if our value chain is totally dependent on China, how can we make decision on anything then? So, and that's a big picture, that if we all understand it, then we will understand why it's important that, for example, we build demonstrators and we have several SME companies with one bigger company. They have to learn together how to provide solutions. And that's the way to go. And it's all interconnected, multidisciplinary, multi-technology. Digitalization is difficult because it's not about one technology. It's about all technologies. It's about solution eventually. And that's where we have to a little bit change also our approach.
Yeah, and I really hope that all the industrial companies in Europe will really move towards that position. That would be really good.
Yeah, I strongly believe, and we have some examples that it is happening. But as I said, cross-border activities, usually it takes time.
Yeah.
We have different protocols, we have different subsidy regulations, we have many different things that has to be aligned. And
yeah, it's extremely complex.
Yeah, it is, and it takes time.
Yeah, definitely. And how do you look at the industry landscape after the corona crisis? Let's say within a year, are we moving forward very quickly, or might we experience some difficulties or hurdles along the way?
Well, we will definitely experience difficulties, so it's not going to be a smooth ride. I don't believe that. I think that some companies will suffer more than other companies, but I also see that some companies that were growing gradually will start growing exponentially. Companies, for example, that already put a very good and agile digital infrastructure, that are handling supply chains from a national perspective rather from a global perspective, those companies will start to grow fast. We will have a new champions in the market. I think that companies that have a difficult situation hopefully will invest in enabling themselves to become a part of a digital supply chains. And what we say, in this particular period, we have to use time to be ready to fly. And we can be ready to fly only if we have good engines and good wings. Yeah. And that means that our digital infrastructure has to be in order. We have to know how we are going to improve productivity and how our production, what will be the idea of our production. We have to know how we are going to get new competencies, the new workforce, new knowledge into organization. So we have to use the time, although the business is not running as we expected. The financial consequences are high. The learning and development has to go on. That's why we are building that on affordable platforms. So many companies will suffer, some will not recover. But many companies have now chance to fly faster than they expected. They have to go now full speed forward and to get out of the storm. And the storm will be over in a few years' time. But we have to start building ourselves into a new position.
Yeah, okay. And as a last question, what is tips or something that you would like to give to our viewers that you have learned from or gained from the last period? What was really insightful or helpful for you, and also for them, hopefully?
Yeah. There are actually three things that we are constantly experiencing and learning from companies. And this is, one thing is the transition we are talking about is expensive. And if somebody says it's not, I never saw a cheap transition to digitalization, which means that the management teams and top management has to really understand what is the value behind. It cannot be done in patches, in small things, in pilots. Then it's even more expensive. So management team really has to understand what will be the future if they do it, what will be the added value if they do it, how they are going to change, and they have to support it. Only then organization can fly. And we have in the market at this moment very beautiful examples how it can work. So this is number one. Number two is digital infrastructure or IT infrastructure, softwares and connectivities, for most of the companies is not a common knowledge. So it should be very good that those companies invest time to understand that for the business they have to build their own architecture and to seek for help. And not to go into trial and error because it's very expensive. They will be locked down by the wrong softwares or wrong connectivities, which is very, very pity. And the third thing is, we heard that expression, long life learning. Technologies that we are experiencing today in the digital domain, start from 5G, VR, AR, digital twinning, this is not a common knowledge. That knowledge is still at the universities and research organizations like Fraunhofer or maybe some other. So try to engage and try to learn and accept that it's long life learning. And not only for one person in a company, but a whole organization. Start organizing your learning paths through pilot environments. For example, we are opening Advanced Manufacturing Center. Perfect place on a low cost to start learning and developing. Engage in our region. We have a fantastic networks like Boost. Get information, start engaging, and learn, and learn. That's very important. So those are three things that if I can advise a company, I always look on 3 dimensions. And then what I say, then you're ready to fly. And it's not easy, and it will take time. And yes, it will take money, and hopefully government will help, but there is, not many other good ways. So I think better do it sooner than later.
Well, that are some really nice tips. So I have to thank you very much for that. Thank you for the inspirational talk and your knowledge that you've shared today. It was really, really helpful for many people, I think so, and I find it very interesting. So thank you very much.
And thank you for inviting me. And everybody is welcome to contact us at Fraunhofer Project Center. So I'm not going to use that as a commercial, so that's not, people can find us, and they do every day. So hopefully this will also give some light to companies that are not in touch with us. And Tom, thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you.
You're welcome.